All right, we are live and everything looks like it's working really well. So welcome to the Rabyd Atheist and welcome to the Rabyd Nation. Uh, so there we go. There we go. And I hope everybody enjoys the new intro. It's a work in progress, but we at least have a good song. And thanks to the mighty Philbert for that. Appreciate that. But there you go. There's that. And today is Deconversion Hangout. So we're a bunch of infidels hanging out, people that have left their faith, people that are interested in knowing about what it's like to leave their faith, a bunch of other things. So if you're interested in just hanging out with us, as such, of course, you have to be a subscriber to participate in chat. And you have to be a subscriber for at least 20 minutes. So kind of gets rid of my drive-bys, theists that just want to cause havoc. So thanks, everybody, for stopping by and appreciate all that. So but yeah, that's what we're doing here today. There is a goal in chat. It's my not too obtrusive way of asking for money for the stream. So if we reach that goal, I have a multitude of hats that you can choose one of four from for me to wear for the rest of the stream. So that's that. And so with all the business handled, we do have the official Rabyd Nation theme song. So which I'm sure will be adopted as the national anthem here shortly. And so there we have that. Yeah, welcome to Deconversion Hangout. Let's see, let's get a roll call really quick. See who's here. Triple E was here early. So we have that. The mighty Philbert. Yes, once thanks again for the music. It was great. Fred is here. Katie is here. See, Cranky Elder Gods. It's always nice when the Elder Gods have their representative. Anne-Marie Thompson is here. So there you go. So that's it so far. Let's see, there was a comment back here somewhere. What horrible things are happening in the world today the gods did absolutely nothing about? The answer is all of them. Yes. Yeah. This is one of those subjects, Fred, that I often get into sometimes with theists, as you well know. Like, there's a whole bunch of crappy stuff going on in the world, and none of the gods seem to give a damn. So it's almost like they don't exist. Probably is. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. That's one. 4 to go. There's that. And Kevin Berry is indeed here in the house. All right, there we go. Deconversion Hangout. I usually try to start with some sort of deconversion issue. Yesterday, I met with my therapist yesterday, as I do every other week on Wednesdays. That's why I don't really have anything on Wednesday for that very reason, because I like to have that clear, so that I can talk to my therapist and then think about it afterwards. And one of the deconversion issues that comes up often is the subject of family and how to deal with family that still believes. And I still have a multitude of family that still believes. So there's that aspect of it. I absolutely get people who face that difficulty because I face it every time. And lately it's been more pronounced, I think, because the believers in my family want to make much more note of the fact that they believe. Hey, Evan, good to see you. You're unlate. You're coming from your own psychiatrist appointment. I hear you. If you had a therapist, they would need a therapist. I think it's a rule that all therapists have to have their own. Like they have to be talking to somebody about stuff too. So yeah, I think that would absolutely. I think that's actually one of the things. They go together a lot, Cranky, because you have, especially if you've been in the religion for a long time, or it's abusive, or it's just kind of really screwed up your life. Yeah, there's a lot to detangle. Like your synapses in your brain have been trained a certain way by your religion, and it's really difficult to change those. Like you have to rethink them, So, I mean, you would know more. You've ate enough brains to know the difference, I'm sure, as an elder god. But there you go. You have to also be very careful, Katie. A lot of therapists and a lot of counseling services are Christian or faith based. And there's probably a lot more of those than actually secular based. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it's like you have to be very careful. It's why I recommend recovery from religion, because they will definitely keep you away from somebody who's like faith based in their counsel. So my therapist is an atheist, so when we talk atheism, we're talking shop. So she doesn't approach it from the standpoint of I've got to get my belief in order to be better. Okay, and that's just a big boost. So the horror stories therapists have to help others with could definitely mess you up if you couldn't talk about them with someone else. Yes. Like, I talk a lot with my therapist, and this is a good deconversion issue, what you talk about when you go to therapy. I talk a lot about how certain behaviors now are certain things I don't like to do and where that might have a religious basis. And that happens a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff that I don't do now because of religious trauma syndrome. Like I run a YouTube channel and I'm regularly, going at theists and people who believe all the time. I have a hard time walking into a church of any kind anymore. And I have a hard time with religious symbols. Like, I just don't want to have anything to do with it most of the time. So you're in Georgia right now. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Jesus Super. I was surprised. When we took our family vacation, of course, we ended up in a part of Ohio that's like Amish Central. So very, very religiously oriented everywhere. So I get you. I get you. I felt really weird because I'm like, this is Ohio. This ain't like the South. But yeah, there's an area of Ohio that's deeply religious because of the Amish influence. So when atheism was considered a mental illness, I don't because I'm too young. But yes, there was a time period where people who didn't believe in God were considered mentally off. The age old argument: how do you have a moral system without without having a belief in some sort of God? And that always gets to be the moral argument. Always gets to be a very interesting one. Okay, so you're saying that you wouldn't be moral unless somebody's watching. Well, never lose the feeling that somebody's watching. Then, I'm moral whether I feel somebody's watching or not. I don't base my morality on somebody else's opinion of my morality. So necessarily, society is there, and how I interact with society is definitely part of my moral system. But I just don't. But yes, it used to be considered a mental illness to not believe. You have a moral without immortality? I don't know. I don't know. You have to have it with immorality. I guess that's kind of what is defined as moral and immoral is always the big question in that discussion. So it's like, but there was a time that atheists were considered mentally off because that led to like lack of moral absolutes and things like that. So they put people that were atheists into homes, so there was a time not so long ago. That's why I'm always reminded of Christopher Hitchens's words, always remember what it was like when they were in power. Always. And a lot of people are waking up to that in my country right now. Like religious people being in power maybe not be the best idea. So you could not hold any public office. I wonder how many decent people were forced to lie to keep their job. Yeah. Oddly enough, Fred, there are 8 states in the United States that still have a requirement that you have to believe in a higher power. So I don't. I know North Carolina is one of them. There's several. Pennsylvania's another. Like there's 8 of them that require you to believe in God, of some sort of God, in order to hold office. Now, since the 1960s decision by the Supreme Court, they haven't been able to enforce that, like, because the Supreme Court's decision says, but given the current regime and how old that decision is and how we have a Supreme Court that's not afraid to change past decisions of Supreme Court, I wonder how much that would hold up if somebody decided to force it in those states and say, no, this person can't hold office because they're an atheist. I would find that very interesting to see what would happen now. Like, I remember when I looked that up. Now, well, it's kind of sort of true. They do have that there, but there's no way they could enforce it given the Supreme Court decision. And it's like, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know. That counts as a higher power, probably. There was a time we could submit it for claiming your elder godhood. Do you think they were right about that? I don't know. I kind of like having an elder god around, even if it is fictitious. It's been the source of a lot of laughs, Cranky. I appreciate you for that reason and not just naturally enthusiastic. How can JC save if there is nobody needing saving? I do an important job being an infidel, and you're naturally enthusiastic at being an infidel. There you go. Yeah, well, you're also naturally. Yeah, Blossom's asking if your period key is broken. It's like, no, he's just that way, Blossom. Fred's just that way. It's just the way it is. So there you go. Yes, enthusiastic. Be enthusiastic infidels. Don't intend it. Okay, there you go. Buy that. All right. But yeah, so my words to people looking for therapists is, if you're leaving your religion, be very careful and make sure that you find somebody who specializes in that if you can, or get a therapist that's not going to lead you back to Jesus is my point. If you're leaving your faith, you want to make sure that that something is there that's going to help you with that through that process, not get a therapist that's going to try to talk you out of it. So it's kind of one of those landmines that you have to watch stepping on, especially in the United States. There's so much counseling that passes itself off as real counseling that's nothing more than Christianese wrapped in psychological verbiage. So make sure you're aware of that. Always shop around. I got lucky. And I'm very aware of how lucky I am to have the therapist I have. So thanks to the Clergy Project and those guys. So, but yeah, the family issue came up again this week because a lot of my family members are becoming more and more overtly Christian, like they're wearing it on their sleeve. And I think it's because of me, especially when I'm around. So, yes, but have you ever considered just talking to an imaginary friend? Yes, I do. I have a lot of imaginary friends online. So there's that. But yes, I mean, Fangs is my imaginary friend. I have an imaginary friend. We got this guy, or him. I mean, depending on how you look at Fangs. Fangs is multiversatile, so it's like, yeah, he's my imaginary friend. I make up stories about him all the time. And it's just as therapeutic as it was when I was making up stories about Jesus Christ and God. So, well, yeah, you're real. Yeah, you have real. I have real friends here in chat. Okay, it's just some of them are, like Cranky here is, he's an elder god. I have an elder god friend. If I said that out loud and genuinely believed it, I might have a problem. As Cranky points out, that, if you believed you were an elder god, they might think you were a little bit mentally ill. That's probably true. There is also secular therapists, Blossom. That's the thing about this discussion. You have to if they have a counseling thing certificate on the wall that's from a Christian organization, these Christian counselors do tend to wear it on their chest, so to speak. Like they let you know that they're a faith-based, Christian-based counseling organization up front most of the time. Some of them don't, and that's all I'm cautioning against. But there are several secular therapist organizations you can look into if that's what you're. If you need therapy, there's places to find it without having the religious overtones. You just have to. I'm just telling you to be cautious and make sure what organization you're picking. So, see, God has to be the most powerful thing ever. So, as knowledge progresses and developed, God has to get more and more powerful. God's biblical feats of power are extremely earthly. Yes. So yeah, it's just as human beings become more and more capable, their God has to be more capable than them, and it becomes more and more difficult to maintain. Like when you look at the biblical account, one of the most funny stories, and this thing I still bring up. Yeah, but Yahweh had trouble with iron chariots. He openly says so. Okay, I remember when we had the theist on. It was probably a few months ago, and I pointed out to him that the one commandment basically says there are actually other gods that exist because this was created at a time when the Israelites were polytheistic. They believed in other gods. They just thought theirs was the best. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, it's when you look at God in the Old Testament, yeah, we can do stuff like knocking down the walls of Jericho. Yeah, we have explosives. We can do that stuff too. So it's God always has to come up with new superpowers as we get more powerful and more knowledgeable. So yes, very astute observation. And because this is a deconversion hangout, I'll make it deconverted rate. You begin to realize how much of this is made up in order to justify your continued belief in God. So yeah. Hey, no problem, Anne-Marie. I wanted you to have it. Earl wanted you to have that too. She put a little work into that one. She wanted to get the green right. So, but Earl is always very excited about giving gifts to people. Trust me. So, and I just relayed it. So I figured it was an unobtrusive way for you to get it without having to. Yeah, folks, do not ever put your personal information in chat. Please, just don't. Okay, I will delete it myself. It's a good way to get into trouble, not with necessarily YouTube, but with other people. So, God feces, they very powerful. Well, becoming more capable in their cruelty. I don't know about that. See, I'm with you. Like every technological advance has its ups and downsides. So I'm not one of those people that hates humanity. I'm not really overly fond of them either, but we have great potential, but we waste a lot of it being stupid. So, religion being top of my list, politics being the other. So, yeah, I agree. See, the beauty of having an atheist deity, Ray, is atheist deities draw strength from people not believing in any God. And so there's always somebody in history that's not believed in gods. And so atheist deities have always gathered strength from that. So you prefer it when gods were made down. Yeah. Our God's the coolest, guys. Come on. Yeah. I don't know if I did that voice really well. It's been a while since I've done Cartman. I'm going out. My throat's a little bothered today. I think the change in weather has some negative effects, but I'm feeling great because I'm not having to deal with my hypersensitivity to heat and shit. You're probably human. Is that no? I think you can get away with that, but like name, address, phone numbers, yeah, don't do that unless you're. And I was glad. I'm like, yeah, I've got Anne Marie as a personal friend on my personal Facebook, so I can relay that to her without revealing a whole bunch of shit. so there. Yes, Red Harvey is humanoid. I know, terrible. earth penetrators, bulldozers, like what's done at Jericho, modern man could do, supposedly in the story, like knocking down all the walls of a city, of an ancient city, wouldn't be that hard for us. And doing it quickly. I mean, you know, we have like bunker buster bombs that would destroy the entire city in a single fell swoop. You know, Sodom and Gomorrah doesn't seem like such a badass move anymore, does it? You know, given what human beings are capable of in destructive power. So, yeah. So, I think that's made up, Evan. Yeah, I think we're just. I don't know. My views on humanity is I'm not a humanist that much anymore, but I do think humans have potential if they grow out of a certain things that keep them childlike. Religion being top of my list. Um, the other childish belief I think we have is that politicians are actually out to help us. So I think we need to get over that one too. So, we make you say that. I don't know. It seems made up. Now here's the problem, Evan. Somebody pokes that in and finds out it's a real address. It's a heck of a state, yes. You Australians have just see foreigners have such great jokes about the United States. I always love it when they do jokes about the United States. I find them funny. So had a tunneling and explosives. Yeah, I mean they had sappers. Like sappers came pretty early with explosives. Like the Chinese had. See, the funny thing about Westerners is like we want to sit here and say, look at all the technological advancement. I'm like the Chinese flipping had it 100 years before we did, you know. And it's like, you know. So there's that, you know. So I mean, when missionaries first reached China, it was like they were in awe because they already had a bunch of stuff that people didn't think they would have. So, hey, Wolf. Threw a fit over celebrating the game. What's the big deal? It's the trolley problem. Yes, with a large group. Yeah, it's like it's. See, that's the thing. I'm not a big believer that humanity is naturally good. I'm not a believer that we're all sinners. I think we're just human, and that has its own benefits and foibles. Like, and a lot of like our adaptation to our environment through evolution, our society seems to have, even though societies evolve slowly, they evolve faster than human beings biologically evolve. And so it's like this tension that's constantly there. So uh actually I'll let you know about the plot for Jericho when I get to writing it. Fangs actually inadvertently causes the Jericho disaster against his wishes. Like he's trying to thwart Yahweh. And so he starts digging a bunch of tunnels because what the way Yahweh really brought down the walls was trying to uh, put explosives. We've been talking about explosives, but Yahweh doesn't actually have any powers to knock down the walls. So he starts putting explosives at different points in the wall. And so Fangs tunnels around and gets rid of all the explosives. And in so doing, however, though, he created a foundational weakness in all the walls of Jericho to stop the explosives and inadvertently caused the problem. So it's not a miracle of God. It's more of the two had a fight and Fangs wasn't paying attention. See, Fangs isn't like other gods. He has its limits. He's not omniscient. He makes unwise decisions because he's a trickster god and he can't help himself sometimes. So, uh, so there's that. But yes, that's how the story is something like that, because it's going to be like the whole theme of my book is Fangs and Yahweh have a rivalry. And Fangs is trying to stop Yahweh's bullshit all the time. And sometimes he succeeds and sometimes he doesn't. So I know. You don't have to work hard at US jokes. We make them up here too. when asked the fucker trying to people to the tracks. Yes, exactly. Why are people tied to the tracks? That was my first. I remember when I was first presented that trolley problem when I was like in middle school. Somebody put that in front of me, and I'm like, "Who the hell is tying people to tracks?" Okay, why don't we find that guy and stop him from doing that shit? And then we wouldn't have to decide which way the switch goes. I was always too smart for my own good, I guess. They genuinely thought they're the best. Yes, you can get into an elitist state. That's why I worry about my own country, the United States, because we think we're the best at everything. And usually that means you start falling behind because you already think you're at the top of the heap. And you can never think that way. So it's always a good way to stagnate. So, yes, that's the latest apologetics theory, Katie. Fast on. The only people that got killed in Jericho, according to these apologists, is the soldiers and a few prostitutes, okay, that were serving the soldiers. Everybody else left the city because they knew the Moses mob was going to destroy it. And it's like, you build walls on a city to protect the citizens. Why would they leave? Okay, why would they leave a safe place for an unsafe place? That doesn't make any sense. But this is trying to get over the fact that it's basically a genocide. Like, the only people that survive are Rahab and her family in the story, and everybody else is killed. Well, that's babies, pregnant women, and you can't be very pro-life if you acknowledge the fact that God does genocides. I saw that just this week. Somebody was like, pro-life rallyist was rallying and talking about how every baby's special and God has a special purpose for them. And the interviewer wrote, well, what about all the baby boys in Egypt, the firstborn that were killed by God? Did they have a purpose? Well, I think we're done with this interview now. So, yes, I know. That's the problem, Y2J. I hear you. Whenever I hear Jericho, I have to, which one are we talking about? Get it? Says no way to Yahweh. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing. Like, yeah, Fangs just becomes very alarmed at Yahweh's narcissism and his desire to have everybody worship him. Like, he's Yahweh's entire focus to become the big dog God that everybody worships. And and Fangs is just kind of very alarmed at that. Says, why would you want that? So yeah, it's kind of that. It really is that way because it's like, as soon as a child's born, it's like, pull yourself up with your bootstraps and, take care of your kid kind of thing. And the extreme forms of pro-life, like get rid of contraception in a country, like there's several Catholic countries that have paid the price for that. So stories is Japanese thought Europeans had yellow eyes because of the first people they met had jaundice. Yeah. Yeah, they did that. Well, yeah. The thing about the Jericho story, the most scholarly view about what happened, where the story came from, is the people that wrote the story back in 600 BC. The ruins of Jericho were there. Like, they were there. You could still go to the ruins of the old city of Jericho. And so they came up with an explanation that their God did it. Okay. And that's the best one. But it's like, Jericho had been leveled many, many years before the story was written. So it's like the whole thing was, yeah, those ruins of Jericho. Yeah, we all did that. Okay. But the latest apologetic trend is to get rid of the people outside, because the genocide aspect of that story bothers a lot of people. And so apologists say, well, there weren't that many women and children in it because they had all left the city. And it's like, if the city was fully functional with its walls intact, why would anybody leave it? The whole point of having a walled city back then was have a safe place where people could go. Why would you leave the safe place? And the apologists have really been scrambling on this one because Jericho as a story is a very heinous story to me. Like, we, you don't just kill everybody. Okay. Even back then, like, back then, women and people were resources. Okay. Like they weren't just, people that conquered other people looked at those people as a resource, enslavement and all that jazz. And so it's been, that story is problematic for saying you have a moral God when you basically kill everybody in the city. Like it's the same problem that they have with the Amalekites. Okay, like it's like everybody, it's like go away. It's like yes, it everybody's destroyed, and it's like why? Because they just didn't believe in you, because they were your enemies. It seems strange for a loving God to order genocide. Period. Full stop. And so what the apologists are doing with the story of Jericho is trying to get everybody out of there except soldiers and combatants and things like that, and the people that service the combatants. That's why Rahab was still there. So it's like it's a real pale attempt to get rid of the moral quandary of Jericho and the Amalekites and others. Like they're trying to soften how many people God had killed in order to be killed. So it's just, but I realized the true story is Jericho was in ruins, and the people that were writing the story gave a bogus explanation of how it got in ruins, that namely it was destroyed by them. And so, yeah, that's kind of the way it works. Special, and God has a plan for it, so we should stop eating and breathing so God can work his magic. Yes, and men, yes. Fair point, Ray. Yeah, like they destroyed everybody. That would be very wasteful. And then Yahweh gets really greedy because, one guy decides to keep some money for himself for his trouble, and that guy gets killed too. So it's like, okay, nice. God always seems to have this one punishment that he always wants to mete out, and that's death. So would use prayer to fly a plane rather than an experienced pilot, probably. I mean, it is easy for a loving God to order genocide if he loves genocide. If he likes watching people die, yeah, I guess I can see that. It probably doesn't affect, but it's absurd. It's absurdly absurd. God's plan that we do what we want, we might as well do what we want. Yes. You don't mean it today. That seemed to affect my personal atoms. Oh, so now we have personal atoms. I'm sorry, guys. The thought of that just don't mess with my personal atoms. My atoms are mine. I have rights to my atoms. Thanks, Cranky. That's 2. 666 is always welcome. Yes, isn't it strange that God's plan so often matches their opinion? Yes. The thing about God's plan for your life, I'm glad I got over that one. That's one deconversion issue that's definitely I'm glad to be over. I was always spending time trying to figure out God's plan and missing it so horribly that you develop a lot of guilt over that. Like, I just can't find God's plan for my life. Well, it seems like it would be more obvious if it was God's plan. So, yes, these are your atoms. These are my atoms. I have a right to my atoms. These are my personal atoms because they make up my personal space. Oh, it's just hilarious. I'm surprised somebody hasn't started it or done it or created it yet. I really am. I hope we didn't create something accidentally. Is it like finding the G spot? Kind of a mysterious thing. There you go. But yeah, but yeah, it's like God's plan was always always something that I dealt with as a minister, because people are always trying to find God's plan for their life, and I'm like, I don't have a clue, what your plan is. Like it always felt like in the end, and now I look back at it, I was just trying to come up with my own plan for my life, and then justifying it by saying God did it, and then if it goes wrong, somehow in the back of I wouldn't say this out loud, but it was God's fault that it went wrong because he didn't clearly explain himself. But you can't say that publicly. But it's like, it's a game people play with this God's plan thing. Like I missed it. I just misunderstood it. I'm a faulty human kind of way. You can get out of it that way because it didn't go right. But then when it went right, oh, God's plan's awesome because look how everything worked out well for me. And it's like, you're talking out both sides of your mouth at this point. So don't put your atoms in my atoms unless it's consensual. Stay in your own atom. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's atoms. Hey, Dave, good to see you, man. Excuse me. Good to see you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, Fred. I know it's Australian dollars, but I'll take them anyway. I don't know. Another 2 or 3 years, they might be worth more than American bucks. So, so might happen. On to something. If God did exist with plans for people, he's either crap at communication or just a jerk or both. Yes, that's kind of it. See, the whole finding God's will is not a part of my life anymore. And I'm so glad. Like, I'm just trying to find what works for me, and I know myself better than an imaginary deity. So it's like, and there's some things I don't understand about myself because maybe they're hardwired and I got to figure them out so I can deal with them. Like, being autistic has been quite a revelation to me because are there certain behaviors I can even get rid of because of that? Like, is there any way to change or be better at certain things or cope any better than what I'm doing right now? Like, there's a limit to how much I can fix. And once you get that in your head, that it's your problem, you have to take responsibility for it. The biggest thing that God's will does for believers is they can advocate their responsibility in figuring that out for themselves. Okay. And now it's all God's problem. If I'm wandering around aimlessly in life, it's because God hasn't revealed his plan to me. Like, you don't have to, it's the same thing with like salvation and sin. I did wrong, shitty things to people. I should be going to them and making it right, but I'll just drop it on God. So, I'll just get rid of it. It's like, it's that way. So, but getting back to Fred, God has a plan, then whatever I do is part of it. So I might as well just do what I do. Yes. And that's the problem though, is that some theists, Fred, have this attitude. They got to find the plan. Like, it's kind of like the argument when you're in a romantic relationship, you're trying to find the one. Like, there's a lot of fundamentalist Christianity that's steeped in finding the right marriage match. Like, you got to find the one that God has for you. And now I kind of look at it as, there's probably tons of people out there that are the right match for you. You just got to figure out which one it's going to be. And, no matter what, you're going to eventually have to work on the relationship. At some point, the high emotional romantic feelings will die down and you're going to have to figure out, is this worth it? But yes, there's a lot of Christians, especially in my country, that they're always looking for God's will, God's one for them as far as marriage. Like, the whole marriage thing gets even more convoluted because, I just don't feel he was the one for me. And then she'll go off and find some other asshole that beats her every day. And like, the other guy was nice to her, but he's not a Christian. The guy that was nice to me isn't a Christian. So I got to go marry this narcissistic, abusive jerk because he's the one God has for me. Like, I have literally heard people logically do that in their brain. So, yeah. You can't figure it out. I can't either. I'm kind of done with that. Like, it's kind of a ridiculous notion when you really think about it too, because if God's ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, Could we ever find out what God's plan is for us? Probably not. Chaos, yes, chaos. My life is going to guard God's plan. He minds his own damn business. Yeah. Yes, Katie. I agree with that. Like, if I look back at my life and that was God's plan, God has a serious problem. Okay? He has a problem. So, yes, reality is a marvelous concept. Don't take away his chaos. Yeah, Fred, don't take away Evan's chaos. He needs it. It does have a plan that's between you and Yahweh, not some self-righteous jackass waving a book. Yes. And that's the thing, though. A lot of people, like as a former pastor, Crank, I can tell you a lot of people, I can't figure out what God's plan is for me. Can you help me out, Pastor? Like it's one of the, you need to understand the congregants feel that way. They want somebody else to take the responsibility of guiding their own life and have them do it for them. And that's a problem to me. Like to me, that's a big problem. Now I would be like, you got to figure it out yourself. Take responsibility. It's like your morality. Instead of having somebody impose a moral system on you, you got to figure out what your morality is. What is it that you consider valuable? What is virtuous? Those kind of things. So one soulmate for each person. Why doesn't God place these two people in close locations from birth instead of needing them to search for them? Again, Yahweh feels like a trickster God. Yes. Yeah. I always had that problem with it. Like it's like, what if the perfect match for me is on the other side of the world and was born 200 years ago? Okay, let's add the time element too. Like, if there's a perfect match for me somewhere, which I don't believe in this anymore, by the way, I don't believe in the one or the perfect one or karma or any of that crap. I believe you can find somebody you're very compatible with, you can get along with, and you can work at establishing a good relationship with. It's never going to be perfect. Okay. It's just never going to be that way. You're two different people. And the other thing that happens is people change over time. So if you're changing in one direction, your partner is changing in another direction, eventually that gap might get to a point where it's like, you know what, we might be better off splitting. Okay. Like this is not working out for us anymore. And I think that there's a lot of people need to consider that in their relationships. Like I wish, there's, some ways I wish marriage was done. Like if it was like a temp contract of 5 years, that had to be renewed every 5 years, I think a lot of people would be more comfortable with that kind of relationship. And then so you do that. So I had a guy tell me they believe God gave him cancer so that he would know what it was like and he would be able to minister to other people with cancer. I just felt bad for him. Yes, I would feel bad for him too. God giving people cancer, at least he's acknowledging that it came from God, I guess. If you have a God that's all powerful and responsible for everything, then yes. So what about the people that get cancer when they're 2 and die from it a couple months later? What do they, I'm sorry, that only makes sense if you're a survivor and only if you're older enough to understand that. So why does God give other people cancer that are neither of those things? Like they're not old enough to understand it and they're not a survivor, so you can figure out. Fangs has no desire to have a plan for you, Ray. That's why it's easy to figure out. Fangs is complete. Even the Fang dammits end with, do whatever the hell you want. These are more like guidelines than actual rules. So, kind of like that. So there you go. Time travel. Yes, we have a time traveling deity. Fangs does travel in time. The way he does that is he's so super fast he can get up to a point where he can do that. He can break the time barrier with how fast he runs. It saved his life a couple of times too. So how much I know. He passed me the devil's lettuce. I go lettuce from Satan's garden. All right, thanks, Wolf. Appreciate it. As well as the joke. Oh, wow. Do as you will, but remember that it leaves everyone else open to do that to you. Exactly. I mean, that's why I've told people the golden rule is really a secular rule because almost every religion has it. It's almost like a societal rule that every religion steals. So, just in Doctor Who's dating service TARDIS. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, if you look at perfect compatibility of two people, number one, I'm not sure it's even possible. But number two, what if the perfect person for me was indeed born a couple hundred years ago on the other side of the world? Like if the two of us had gotten together, it would have been a perfect match, right? How does that work? It's like God, they're always saying, oh, this person's the perfect one for me. I'm going to marry them. I'm like, they live right down the street. Isn't that convenient that God put them so close to you? Other people seem to have to search for a bit. So, I mean, I've always held this, like, why does marriage have to be for life? Why can't it be like, I'm kind of that way now because I think it leaves it out. Like if you don't want to renew the contract at a certain point, you don't have to. Okay. And you can always come back to it. And it doesn't mean you have to stop living together. I mean, I always look at the custom of marriage and it's like, why does this require legalities? And yeah. Disgusting, sinful babies. Shit that okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Lucifer has some pretty good lettuce. So I've heard. And you need to take care of the kids and leave each other alone. Yeah, I see, and that's why I've always like societies and cultures that have marriage like as a renewable thing, like you have to appear in public together every few years to renew it. That actually does exist in some cultures. I've always felt that was a better plan. Like people change, okay, and you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know this person anymore. They've changed in a different direction than I have. We are, like in my case with my ex, it was like our kids are all grown up. I don't really feel the same about anything like you do. I don't feel like we're really out for each other's best interests anymore. It's like there was a long list there, and many of you have heard some of it, but yeah, if I'd had a renewable contract every 5 years, it might have been a different thing. I might have been out of that like 2 years before I was. So yeah, there's no juice. Yeah. Yeah, story of your life. There you go. Yeah, but it's like I've always felt that marriage was interesting that we make it till death do us part. It seems like a pretty difficult part for a lot of people with the contract. Like and then a Christian will probably be getting chat, and I'll save them the trouble and talk about how, well, it's a covenant, not a contract, so it's a lifetime thing, just like God makes a covenant with you. And I'm like, no. No matter what word you use to describe it, marriage is a contract. It's an agreement between two people about certain things. And, there's stipulations in that contract, and those contracts can be different. And the expectations that each person has out of that contract is often different. So, I don't know. I look at the whole subject of marriage, and it's like, I think it's a really weird thing that we do to ourselves. Like, don't get me wrong, relationships can be hard. There's a lot of brokenheartedness. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. I absolutely agree with that, but it's the element of it, that's till death do us part. And it's like, that's a pretty tall order to find the right person for that. Now, there are some people that have made it, and they've done it. And I'm not going to, kudos for them. If that made them happy in life, then go for it. But I don't know, people change. Like they're not the same. And you're always changing. You're a different person today than you were yesterday. So it's like, it's slow, it's incremental, but 10 years from now, you'll look back and say, man, that guy was an idiot, or I'm so different than I was back then. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of marriage anymore as a concept. Like it's just like, if you want to have it, understand what it is. It's a contract that obligates both sides to certain things. And when you don't want to have those obligations, it seems like we should have the contract lasts for 5 years, renewable every 5 years, kind of thing. So, there's an argument to be made to get rid of it as an institution. Like there's a lot of people that still like it though, because you get tax breaks and everything else, but it's a really weird reason. Okay, so two people decide to live together so they get a bigger tax break. What's that? What are they doing that deserves that break, Yeah, getting out of your own contracts, yes. Contract with a deity that isn't working, call fangs. Honestly, I think I'm actually heading that vein in the second chapter, because when you look at like all the Old Testament laws, Cranky, I really think it's because Yahweh had problems with Asherah and all of his negative laws about women and marriage and making marriage so male-centered and misogynistic is because of a direct result of those problems in his own relationship. So So Fangs is involved in trying to adjudicate this. I can see that. Covenants, we have a special pen of experts ready to help. Cranky, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. That just made my day. So there you go. Yes, I know, and that's even worse, Ray, because the Mormons and others like, oh, after you die, you get back together with your spouse, and I'm like, which one? Like, if you have somebody who got married 3 or 4 times, like this was brought up to Jesus, and Jesus says there is no marriage in heaven. So the Mormons are kind of cutting against Jesus's own words there. So apparently they never read that part or want to ignore it. I'm sure there's some Mormon theological babble about how they get around that verse, because there's always ways to get around verses. There's always loopholes. So yeah, it is a legal contract, which is why I'm saying, Katie, like a lot of legal contracts have a time limit, and then they have to be renewed. And it seems like marriage would be a perfect one for that. Like your initial marriage period is 5 years. I mean, I realize that this would give divorce attorneys nothing to do, because basically a lot of people are just like, I'm just going to wait out my contract and be done with it, and then I'm no longer married. And so divorce attorneys wouldn't have any way to make money anymore. And that's probably why we don't do that. Like, it's like, it makes too much sense too. Like it is a contract. Like your love and feelings for a person will go up and down throughout your life. Okay. So it's like, yeah. And to me, that's why I think it should be considered a contract, and it should be terminable, without too much fuss and muss. So yeah. You want to have tax breaks for having roommates? There you go. I mean, because basically that's what it is. You decide to have a permanent roommate and you get a tax break. What? So is chat the panel of experts? Probably. Apologies, restriction. And Mormons, wives get their husband's planet. So if a schmuck had a lot of wives, I guess he would just be a really packed planet or something. Oh, I feel so sorry for people that still think that they're married after death. I think death to his part is pushing it for most of us. So I can't imagine like having a theological belief where you believe that you're going to have your own planet. First of all, everybody gets their own planet. That's a nice, I don't want one. It's too much real estate. So I just don't want to deal with it. There's going to be all kinds of parts of that are crap that I'm not going to be able to sell. I just don't. You don't rely on your memory Mormon myths. Okay, I guess. I'm guessing there's no sex in heaven either, so why would I want to go there? Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like Jesus says, there's no marrying or marriage in heaven, And I don't know how the Mormons get past that line. Like, it's pretty clear. I would argue it doesn't say one way or the other whether there's sex there, and I used to have somebody argue, and I used to say, well, that might be a decent argument if I still believed in God, that all the sex taboos are off once you get to heaven. So heaven, you can actually have your orgy. You don't. Here down here, marriage is designed to protect us from ourselves, but I don't know. I've always found theological beliefs like this that affect our personal lives and our married lives and everything else is kind of really weird. So, of course, they do. There's a lot of people that say there's sex in heaven. It's like there's no barriers anymore. So, the thought of it just it amazes me what people think because they're trying to keep their shit. Radio station. And the guy talking said atheists cannot exist, but then he pointed to a Bible verse that said that they think it's stupid and should be disregarded. Yes, they will do that. The practical side of theology is every theologian has to ignore verses that contradict his position because there's always something in the Bible that will contradict your theological position because it's a contradictory book. Okay, so theology is built on a very bad foundation to begin with if you're a Christian theologian. Atheists don't exist. He's probably, he's a Romans 1:18-20 guy, but then he'll point to other verses in the Bible that are problematic to his viewpoint that he doesn't want to follow. So why should I follow Romans 1:18-20 if other verses are kicked out? See, this is kind of the problem that people have when they have this high view of the Bible as scripture is I really pressed people that were like liberal Christians. Sorry, you have to take all of this or nothing. So you have to take the slavery bits, you have to take women are subservient to men bits, and you have to keep those. It's no fair throwing them out simply because they're inconvenient in today's society. If the Bible's the word of God, you can't contradict it. But people do it all the time. So Smith would say that the interpretation was corrupted, which Jesus actually said, well, there's no marriage in heaven except for American Jews. Okay, yeah. I mean, Philbert, you're right. I mean, I'm sure they have come up with something, but yeah, Mormons have always, I found weird because they're more flexible in their theological beliefs than a lot of people think. So, yeah, it's a cherry picking. So, yeah, it's a go-to for them because that's how they dismiss us personally. And it's like very disrespectful. And they get really mad at me, cranky, when I point out, no, I know the Bible's false because I know that verse is false. I genuinely don't believe in God. And Paul is wrong. And when I say that, they, of course, go ballistic because they're like, God can't be wrong. I said, yeah, he's wrong because I genuinely don't believe in God. And those verses are bullshit. Okay. And then they get all upset. 72 virgins in the afterlife. It doesn't say whether they're boys or girls, though, Anne Marie. So they might be in for a surprise. Doesn't say. Oh my gosh. True blissful state of mind, God's in constantly serving on the wants and needs of a God. I just don't. No. You have to have all kinds of narcissists. This is why I'm portraying Yahweh as a narcissist. He's definitely a narcissist. He's all about himself. Because when you create an afterlife system that basically is about worshiping yourself, I think you have a problem. Yeah, it's wrong. It's the thing is, cranky. I remember when the first time I did that with a theist, and he's like, well, I said, no, you haven't proven that part of the Bible is even right, and I know for a fact now that it's wrong. Okay, because I am an atheist. I don't genuinely believe in God, and those verses in Romans are bullshit. Okay, and they didn't know what to do with that. They were like, yeah, cherry pick the Bible, but you'd rather cherry pick apples. There we go. Well, apple pick the Bible. I don't know. is what we typically use for girls even reliable. No, it's like virginity is a really weird concept to me anyway. Like I I guess I so despise what purity culture does with it. I just like I look at it and say, okay, they just haven't had sex yet. So what? That just means they're lacking in experience in an area, and they really shouldn't talk about sex and marriage and relationships and all that crap until they actually do something about it. So, the Pope is always talking about like how marriages should be. I'm like, how the hell would you flipping know? So, I'm trying to. It's a valid case, Philbert. The problem is there are secular scholars and some secular. There's actually more proof for Paul's existence than Jesus in a lot of ways, mostly because he actually wrote something. And there's a guy. Let me put it this way: there's a guy that calls himself the Apostle Paul, who genuinely wrote 7 letters that are attributed to him usually, and there's other 6 that probably aren't written by the same guy, but they all claim to be written by the Apostle Paul. It's not really a big deal to prove somebody's existence. The issue of somebody's existence isn't really that issue much. It's what they did. Did they actually do the things that people claim they did? But yes, there are some secular historians that are like, yeah, the existence for the Apostle Paul is kind of shaky as fuck. Okay, it is. Okay, well, shaky as fangs. We'll use fangs that way I won't get in trouble with YouTube censors. But it's shaky as fangs. It's like it's the real problem is just because somebody wrote at the top of a page that I'm the Apostle Paul writing to you doesn't mean it's so. Okay, there's no evidence or proof for that necessarily. That's the problem with ancient antiquity writings is you have somebody usually that claims to write it and you just take it at face value because you have no real reason to be critical of it. So, but yes, there is a group of people that are like questioning Paul's existence because he doesn't appear at all outside the Bible either. So, it's like it's very rare to find something, but it's not Paul's not an unbelievable character. He's a human, so yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So, the biblical certain sounds like slavery. It is, if you look at the biblical version of heaven, it is slavery. It's basically everybody being enslaved to Yahweh and worshiping for him forever. Not really the best mode of doing anything for yourself. Okay. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Glad that there's still heretics across the Atlantic. It's good. It does my heart good. Marriage advice from a celibate priest, probably not the best. No. Yeah, it really is whether they did supernatural stuff. Like, I don't have a problem with saying Jesus existed or don't exist. That's a historical question. Did he walk out of a tomb after being dead? That's the claim. I'm like, doubt. Very much doubt. It's been known to academia for centuries that 5 different authors wrote the Torah. Yes, we know that. Like, I think with Paul, the bare minimum you could say with Paul is that there's at least 2 writers of the epistles of Paul. There's one guy that definitely wrote 7 of them because the writing style is like spot on the same. It's when you get to the other 6 that how many different writers were there that wrote the other pseudo Paul epistles? That's a good scholarly question, I think, still, the people. So there's that. Yeah, I make things great. That's kind of the problem there. Yeah. See, because in Christianity, like, you have to deal with Paul's words. If you believe that that's Paul and you believe that those are his words, he says, stop depriving each other. He's literally saying, don't deprive your spouse of sex. Just don't do it. Okay. And so when you're married in a Christian context, you can't refuse each other. Okay. So it's like, it gets interesting with that dynamic like that. I can't imagine that. Oh, I can't imagine that not leading to some form of abuse. So, yeah, and that's the point, Kyle. It's like just because these ancient writers said they were this and wrote to this, that it's there's a lot of historical stuff that we just kind of accept. Like if a writer says that he was this person, then that's the person. Okay, so there's that. But it gets more difficult that way because we still like, even though I don't think Matthew wrote Matthew, I still call it the book of Matthew because it's been called that forever. And the same is true for all these writings of antiquity. If they list an author, that's better than the Gospels who don't list any author at all. Or at least we don't even have a starting point really with most of the Gospels of who wrote them, other than Ignatius of Antioch's statement of who the four authors were, which he doesn't bother to prove, and he doesn't tell us where he gets that information from. He just states it. It's a claim. So, hey, modern atheism, how you doing, man? That's true. Paul said, like, screw all with your desires to screw, but also, how dare you occasionally not be in the mood if you're married? Yes, he does say that. Probably one of the most, if you want to try to reconcile something that's really contradictory in the Bible, I challenge you to do Paul's stuff on marriage and relationships. Go ahead. So, and then the objection that an eternal timeless object cannot cause anything because it cannot act. Context is the first cause argument. An eternal timeless object cannot cause a. Well, first of all, I would ask what makes them think that there's an internal timeless object. I mean, I get we're probably talking about the singularity. There are theories about the singularity not being like this eternal timeless object. Like it came from somewhere, like a collapsing universe theory. So I get what the objection is, but it's kind of stupid. It's kind of word games, really. Cranky nailed it. It's word games because I'm not sure that I can buy the idea of a singularity being the start of the Great Expansion, but I don't know if that singularity was eternal or timeless, that sort of thing. Like the concept of timeless at that level also is kind of fuzzy anyway. What do you mean by timeless? See, this is our problem with our human meat brains. We get to a certain point and we can't go any farther. Okay. So, yeah. I want to propose. I don't want to propose an infinite past, and I want to postulate something like a timeless quantum field or singular. I mean, you can propose that, I guess. I don't think it's necessary to get rid of the first cause argument because they have to still prove there's a first cause. Like, what is the first cause is a really good question. Like, to me, it's like, what is the first cause? I mean, how would you define it as a first cause? So, I mean, the whole first cause argument fails for me because it certainly doesn't prove anything. Like, because you're going to spend all your time debating what a first cause is, what the first cause was, if it is and was even have any relativacy once you get to that point in the time space continuum, so to speak. It's the problem with those arguments for the existence of God, like the first cause argument for the existence of God, is you still have to prove that the first cause is indeed your particular God, and you haven't demonstrated that either. So that's why the whole thing fails for me. There's like this assumption that there needs to be a first cause. Why can't there be multiple first causes? Why can't it be plural that all popped up at once? Like there's so many variants to that it just makes the first cause argument. It's always been silly to me after a while. So yes, but there's no problem with an infinite regress either. Like if time and if energy has always existed, then it's always existed. Like infinite regress, a lot of people think it's a problem, but I don't know that it is. I mean, you're kind of stuck with infinite regresses until you find something that stops them from being an infinite regress. Right. But like, it's like there are philosophers who argue that an infinite regress isn't as illogical as you think. So, see you later, Fred. Yeah, I kind of agree with Cranky. I kind of dismissed a lot. I don't know if they're like mysticism based, but a lot of the arguments for the existence of God are just, they're blatantly assuming that God exists before they even make the argument for God exists. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of paradoxes in this, and that's the problem with it. Like, and bottom line, not because there's so much problems with everything, does it really prove anything? And if it doesn't really prove anything, it doesn't prove God either. So it's a horrible argument for God. So it's like when I was a Christian, I was trying to argue for the existence of God. The first cause argument was one of the first ones I abandoned because there's just too many things I have to prove as a theist. Like I have to prove that there's a personal start to the universe. I also have to prove that it is my God that I actually worship. It also has to prove so many things. The first cause leaves you with more questions than it answers. So it's like it's not really helpful in proving God. And I came to that conclusion when I was a theist. That's why I never made it when I was a theist. Like the other arguments I would make, but not that one. So yeah, it just doesn't work that way. Yeah, my whole thing with this, Cranky, has been when you look at logical arguments for the existence of something, anything, it's not really logic that proves it. It's usually data. It's like testable, repeatable results usually prove something exists and is there. And a lot of these logical arguments lack in the fact that you can't make scientific hypotheses about them and prove them. So it's like you can't prove anything one way or the other. Yeah, I mean, we can kind of get an idea of how the outside world affects our current existence. We have a lot of good stuff for that. It's just I've always found the arguments for the existence of God. I mean, I've done them on the channel. I mean, maybe at some point again I'll do them again. But the more I did them and the more I talked about them, the more I was like, this is kind of bullshit in a circle. Like there's so much circular reasoning in every argument for the existence of God, for instance. It's not fun. It just isn't fun at all. And it doesn't prove anything. Like you have to assume there's a God to prove the existence of God. Like there's that big philosophical quandary at the center of it all of I'm trying to prove the existence of God. And by the very act of trying to prove the existence of God, I'm assuming his existence without actually proving it. And that's the problem. If we were going to run into God and evidential proof for God, we would just run into it. Like it would, here's some evidence. And boy, this all points to the conclusion that it's a God without assuming God even exists. Okay, that's the problem with every one of the arguments for the existence of God. They assume God exists and automatically make it begging the question to me. So, yes, what do you mean by bullshit? Well, that's actually Jordan Peterson's Philbert, but that's okay. But yeah, I don't. Logic has its limits. Like logic to me is a great way of proving what's wrong with my reasoning. It doesn't necessarily prove even if I have good reasoning, it doesn't prove that my premises are true. That takes a whole different thing. Okay, like I can have a logically sound argument and it seems to follow, but it doesn't mean that I have data to prove the data points. Those are two very different questions to me. Like if I have premise one and premise two and it makes a good conclusion, well, that's great. The argument's sound, but do I have any proof that the premises are true that lead to the conclusion? Do I have any facts, evidence, data, something that suggests that those things are true? No, most of the time in the arguments for the existence of God, they're just made up premises without any evidence. So it's like, okay. Yeah, it's not. And it's not constrained to be logical. And it's like I said, logic has its limits as a tool. That's why I say it's a tool. It's not like theists are arguing, well, logic, the rules of logic prove God exists because they're timeless and immortal. It's like, no, they're not. So, yeah, it's like you can have a valid argument, but you don't know if things are true. And if the premises are like could be true, could be false, you haven't proven a damn thing. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, Frank does it too. Okay, he does it. Valid modern day. It depends on what you mean by bull and crap. I studied logic in college, and I had a few conversations with a professor. And when I came away from it, it's a very valuable tool in finding out when you're thinking badly, like when you don't have a valid argument because it just doesn't line up. But you still have to prove your premises are true and factually accurate. And with the arguments for the existence of God, you can't do that. You just can't do it. So. Yeah, and that's the thing, Dade. The big thing with most of the arguments that exist in God, if you look at the premises, do I have a data point that proves that? And the answer is often shrug shoulders. And so when you put in the margin, is this premise true or false? You have to put T/F ? And so what happens to the conclusion then? Well, you have to put T/F ? by the conclusion too, because until you get the whole thing down where you have the premises are true, therefore the conclusion's true, and everything sounds up, it's valid, it's sound, then it becomes a valuable tool. But most of the arguments for the existence of God don't deal in truth. Okay, they just don't. And it's not really about truth. It's about trying to create a possibility in your brain that God could exist. And that's all it's really about. So yes, they know about the liar's paradox. Yes, the laws of logic. I'm not really sure logic has laws. It's a tool. Okay, it's like when they talk about math, and drives me insane. It's like I literally have a history of how math was developed as a tool to describe things by human beings, but somehow God did it. So, like, it's frustrating. Like I see the thing, this is Deconversion Hangout, and we're talking about the arguments of God and math and all this crap. One of the things I've gotten very good used to now is how ignorant I am. Okay. And how ignorant I'm going to be at the moment of my death too. Like there's just too much in the universe to know. And I'm never going to know all of it to make such a hard conclusion about much of anything. Like I'm an agnostic atheist for a reason. I always leave the door open. If you can prove to me some sort of God exists with some evidence, facts, and all this other stuff, and lay it out, and this is going to be a fight and a battle, by the way, then yeah. So there you go. And the non-contradiction and excluded middle, but they're also not. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's different logical systems. So now I have to bring in this, to the arguments for the existence of God. Which system are we using? Hey, Earl. You are very, very fashionably late. I got like 10 minutes, girl. So, very, very fashionably. She is truly fashionable today. So there you go. Is that statement true or false? Yes, the statement is false. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Like every time I did a video on the arguments for the existence, gosh, this is 2-3 years ago, I always was left, well, I don't know that that's true or false. And so the conclusion could be true or false. So it doesn't help me. You fell asleep. Well, get your rest, girl. You need it. Yeah, and that's the thing. I get it. I do you. I mean, I came to these conclusions by working through the arguments, and the first cause argument is a good one to work through. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. What I'm saying is I think you're going to come to an end of it where you realize, man, there's just so much gray here. Like there's nothing I can say definitively on certain things. And by working through it, I think you're going to come to those conclusions. Like the arguments for the existence of God, in my opinion, like if some theist came at me with those, I'd like, that's a non-starter for me, because I've already dismissed them all as begging the question, and you can't prove the truth of a lot of your premises. So your conclusion that God exists cannot be proven still. So there we go. I mean, and theists will admit that too, that their arguments don't actually prove God's existence. They just find them a compelling mind exercise. So dizzy. Oh, Philbert. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down the, Fangs does not recommend the logic fair rabbit hole. He dug it himself, and he's a trickster god, so be advised. You know, if you want something, it'll make your head hurt, and then after a while, you wonder why it hurts. It's that kind of crap. It's the liar's paradoxes. It's the logical stuff. I mean, I use logic, but it's like I now realize what it is. It's like a tool. And it has certain effectiveness on certain things, and there's other things that's like, probably not the best tool for the job. So, so there's that. Yeah, it's kind of, but that's kind of the point, to point out that there's circular reasoning and logic too. So you gotta. Yeah, but I'm just telling y'all that rabbit hole was dug by Fangs himself, the trickster god. So be advised, be aware. Oh, well, thank you, Earl. So we might have a new banner to go along with our new music. I'm working this weekend. Oh, for those of you that follow the channel, support the channel, I suppose before I sign off here in about 5-10 minutes, I took the music that Philbert gave me, and I'm trying to figure out a way to do something more than a still of a rabbit on a flag with it. But I think that one's also pretty good too. But getting my intros and outros done this weekend, hopefully, including stuff for videos, because I want to start taking clips from these streams. Like what we just talked about with the whole logic and stuff would make a great clip, a 5-minute clip for a short or something, and pique people's interest and get some comments going. But yes, I wanted a new banner, and Earl's been working on that. We wanted to throw Fangs in my banner, so the Rabyd Atheist and the Rabyd Atheist coming together. So we're all together there. So yes, yeah, it'll make your head hurt. If there's something that's done by a trickster god who loves circular reasoning, there you go. The liar's paradox is a really good one. So, but yes, there's a lot of going on the channel. I really appreciate everybody. We got 4 donations and 4 minutes left. That's the only reason I'm hanging on right now. So you're going to be confused for the rest of the day. See, that's the thing about this stuff. Like, I love philosophy. I really do. But my day-to-day life often isn't really affected by it as much. So there's that. Aww. But yes. Yeah, you can. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking something different though, Michael. And I need to work on my own editing skills for this stuff. I need to get beyond the level I am in editing. I've been actually having fun, like with the actual song a little bit, cutting it a little bit, and doing it for different parts of stuff. So I need to up my editing game a little bit. Well, Michael, so I appreciate the offer though. If I get totally frustrated, I'll hand it to you. Yeah, so Ship of Thebes, yes. I remember watching Rationality Rules to do the Ship of Thebes. Like, is it the same ship if you replace every part one part at a time over 1,000 years. Is it really the same ship? So what is the identity of the ship? Is it actually the boards, planks, and all the canvas, or is it something else? Yeah, that'll keep you up too. Considering our bodies change all of our cells every 7 years, like there's an argument to be made. Are we the same person 7 years from now? So. uh, 3D thing. Okay. All right. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm Michael. I'm like, Ed, you need to work on this. You need to be able to do some of this stuff better. So, and because I've got videos to make, and I definitely want the quality to improve. So, something I got to work on. Yeah, but it's completely different boards, completely different nails. Nothing in the ship is the same. Is it still the ship? So what identifies it as a ship? Is it the boards, the planks in it, or just that we call it that? So it's fun. Don't get me wrong. This is fun shit for me. It's just, I don't know how practically helpful it is. The argument made for a sailboat, still the U.S. Navy, the ship of thieves. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of questions that come up, Cranky. There's a lot of questions that come up on the ship of thieves. And I think that's the whole point of the exercise. Who's the philosopher that made that up? That came up with that. And all he was really trying to do is illustrate some of the points that he was trying to make. Like, identity is a very interesting issue. So, and he was challenging the classical idea of the law of identity. So, but yeah. So this is all great fun, but I get to a point and there's that, and of course Cranky is like, wear the damn hat, and so now I got to wear the damn hat for like 3 minutes, so because I got to sign off, I got to go to work, so there's that element of it. But the winner, it looks like, is Slash. So Guns N' Roses, here we go. I don't know. But thank you, Cranky. I appreciate your support of the channel. It's fine. It's fun. So there you go. Pulls over. Slash top hat. Newsboy was a close second. The black top hat and the fedora. So times matters little to the elder gods. My wrinkles far on protest. Ain't that true? Ain't that true? But yeah, it's been a fun stream, guys. I like getting together on the Hangout because we just hang out as unbelievers and talk about shit. And I'm all for everybody delving down the old the rabbit hole of logic. Fangs approves. It allows a lot of confusion, and in the confusion, in a dust and a puff of smoke, he can do his mischief. So he's good. Logic appeals to him. But yeah, it's been fun tonight. Got a lot of things. Blossom kind of said, there's a lot of things in this channel that need work. And I'm like, yeah, I should put a construction sign out front because it really is in that kind of state right now. Probably will be for a couple more months. So, but yeah, I'm working on it. And, we got a song now. That's a plus. It's kind of acting as my intro and outro for now. So there's that aspect of it. So, but yeah, we're having a lot of fun around here, and appreciate all the donations tonight. Thank you for that. Keeps the mission going, which is to normalize atheism, deconversion. And I talk to people on Thursday about deconversion because a lot of people go through it and a lot of people want to understand it better. I'm no expert, but I've been doing it. I've been deconverting myself for quite some time. So I'm starting to understand the process a little bit better, and a lot of other people are beginning to hopefully understand it due to this program here on Thursday. So thank you for that. But I do have to sign off. I got to get ready for work. It's been a great, fun night. Appreciate all of your comments and stuff. It was great discussions tonight. So thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. But as always, let Fangs nibble on your heart. May he keep your vegetables free of religious corruption with his sharp, pointy teeth. Make sure you circumcise your carrots, because even though they are the most holy of vegetables, you can make them even more holy by circumcising them. So take off the tip. And nom nom, and may you grow closer to him as he nibbles on your heart. So thanks everybody for all of that. And as always, you only get live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, your money, your opportunities, and giving them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you all next time, which will be Saturday. And I haven't really decided what we're going to do, but I do know that I have entered the Halloween season mode, so it'll probably be Halloween related. So we'll see then. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and I'll catch you all on Saturday.